There's something magical about the ripple effect of kindness. It starts small, often unnoticed, and grows into something extraordinary, changing lives in ways we never imagined. In today's story, we'll journey through the transformative power of compassion as we unravel the heartwarming tale of Lillian, a teacher who extended her hand to help a struggling student, only to uncover a truth that redefined her understanding of human connection. If you believe in the power of empathy and the beauty of life's surprises, this story is for you. Let us know in the comments your thoughts and share an inspiring phrase about kindness, like, "I choose compassion, for it opens doors to endless possibilities." Hit that subscribe button if you feel connected to this message, and let's begin a journey that might just change how you see the world. Lillian had always considered teaching more than just a profession. To her, it was a calling, a chance to mold not just minds, but also hearts. She was the kind of teacher who went beyond the syllabus, weaving lessons of empathy and integrity into her classroom dynamics. The moment Dominic Ercole walked into her classroom, Lillian's heart stirred. Dominic was new to the school and carried an air of quiet resilience. Her clothes, though clean, bore the marks of frequent use, faded fabrics and fraying hems. Her backpack, a patchwork of repairs, revealed a story that spoke of struggle. As Lillian observed Dominic, she noticed something remarkable. Despite her modest appearance, Dominic held herself with quiet dignity. She didn't shrink under the whispers or averted gazes of her classmates. Instead, she moved with purpose, as if unaffected by the unspoken judgments around her. That evening, Lillian found herself reflecting on Dominic's situation. Teaching was her job, but compassion was her instinct. She decided to step in, not to fix Dominic's life, but to create an environment where the young girl could thrive. The next day, after class, Lillian called Dominic aside. She spoke with the warmth of a mentor and the care of a guardian. "I want you to feel at home here," she said, handing her a discreet package. Inside were new clothes, notebooks, and art supplies. Dominic hesitated, her fingers tracing the edges of the package. A glimmer of emotion crossed her face before she met Lillian's eyes. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice steady. Lillian watched as Dominic left, the package clutched tightly in her hands. What Lillian didn't know was that her act of kindness was only the beginning of a journey that would teach her as much as it would teach Dominic. The next day, Dominic arrived at school wearing the new clothes. Her classmates noticed the change, but Dominic remained her usual composed self. Lillian observed quietly from her desk, feeling a flicker of hope. Yet, something lingered in the air, an unspoken question that neither Lillian nor Dominic could articulate. For Dominic, the new clothes were more than just fabric. They were a gesture, a symbol of someone's belief in her worth. But Dominic wasn't used to charity, and she carried the gift with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. As the days turned into weeks, Dominic began to open up just a little. She participated more in class, her hand occasionally shooting up to answer questions. Lillian watched as her peers began to see her in a new light. Not as the girl with worn-out clothes, but as a person with ideas, talents, and a unique voice. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. One afternoon, Lillian overheard two students whispering about Dominic, questioning why someone so poor was even in their school. The words stung, but Lillian chose not to intervene. She wanted to see how Dominic would handle the situation. Later that day, Dominic addressed the class during a group discussion. She spoke with a confidence that silenced the whispers. "Everyone has a story," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "Mine isn't better or worse, it's just mine, and it doesn't define what I'm capable of." The room fell silent. In that moment, Dominic became more than just a student. She became a force, a quiet reminder that appearances could never capture the full essence of a person's story. Yet, beneath her calm exterior, Dominic was hiding something. And Lillian, driven by a growing sense of curiosity, began to piece together fragments of the puzzle. Who was Dominic really? Where had she come from? And why did she seem so unfazed by the challenges that would overwhelm most people her age? Lillian's journey to understand Dominic's story would lead her down an unexpected path, revealing truths that would challenge her own perceptions of kindness. humility, and human connection. As for Dominic, she was about to discover that even the smallest acts of compassion could have ripple effects far beyond what she could imagine. What is it about Dominic that sets her apart? And what secrets lie beneath her composed exterior? Lillian's quest for understanding will soon uncover a startling connection, a revelation that ties their lives together in ways neither could have foreseen. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this tale of compassion, resilience, and the transformative power of looking beyond appearances. From the moment Dominica Coley stepped into the classroom, she became a subject of curiosity and quiet judgment. Children can be harsh critics, often reflecting the biases and preconceptions of the world around them. Dominic's worn clothes and patched backpack spoke to a life that seemed out of place in this particular school, where many students came from well-to-do families. Despite her modest appearance, Dominic had an undeniable aura of confidence. She held her head high, her posture straight, as if refusing to shrink under the weight of critical stares. It wasn't bravado, it was resilience, and it intrigued Lillian. Dominic's arrival stirred a mix of emotions among her classmates. Some were indifferent, others openly curious, but a small group whispered behind her back. Comments about her clothes, her quiet demeanor, and even the way she carried herself were exchanged in hushed tones. "Do you think she's poor?" one student whispered to another. "She doesn't belong here," came the reply. Lillian overheard these murmurs and felt a pang of frustration. She knew the importance of teaching children not just academic lessons, but also lessons in empathy and acceptance. Yet, she also understood that such biases weren't erased overnight. To her surprise, Dominic seemed unaffected by the chatter. She participated in class discussions, asked thoughtful questions, and completed her assignments with diligence. It was as if she had an inner shield, a way of deflecting the negativity around her. But Lillian wasn't convinced that Dominic was entirely unbothered. One day, during recess, she noticed Dominic sitting alone under a tree, sketching in a notebook. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held a trace of sadness. "Do you want to join the others?" Lillian asked, walking up to her. Dominic looked up and smiled faintly. "I'm fine here," she said. Lillian sat down beside her. "It's okay to let people in, you know. Sometimes they just need a little help understanding you." Dominic shrugged. "People see what they want to see," she replied, her voice tinged with wisdom beyond her years. Those words stayed with Lillian. What did Dominic mean? Was it a reflection of her current experience, or did it stem from something deeper? In the following weeks, Lillian made it a point to observe Dominic closely, not out of pity but out of genuine curiosity. She noticed how Dominic navigated the social dynamics of the classroom. She wasn't entirely isolated. Some classmates began to warm up to her, but there were still those who clung to their prejudices, refusing to look beyond her outward appearance. One such instance occurred during a group project. The students were assigned to teams, and Dominic was paired with two classmates who had been particularly vocal in their criticism of her. At first, the tension was palpable. The two students exchanged looks, clearly displeased with the arrangement. But then, something unexpected happened. As the group began working on the project, Dominic's ideas and contributions stood out. She had a sharp mind and an impressive ability to think critically. Slowly, her teammates began to see her not as the girl with the old clothes, but as a valuable member of the team. By the end of the project, one of them even admitted, "You're really smart, Dominic. I didn't know." Dominic smiled and replied, "There's a lot you don't know about me." It was a small victory, but it was significant. Dominic's quiet strength and undeniable talent were beginning to break down the walls of prejudice around her. For Lillian, this was a moment of validation. She had always believed in the power of kindness and the importance of looking beyond appearances. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Dominic's story, something that explained her resilience, her wisdom, and the way she seemed so unfazed by the challenges she faced. One day, while organizing papers after class, Lillian noticed something unusual. Dominic had left her sketchbook on her desk. Curious, Lillian picked it up and flipped through the pages. The sketches were remarkably detailed, expressive, and filled with emotion. But what caught Lillian's attention was a particular drawing. It depicted a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Dominic, standing in front of a grand building that looked like an Italian villa. The caption read, "Dreams of Home." The drawing was a window into Dominic's world, a glimpse of a life that seemed far removed from her current reality. What was the story behind it? And how did it connect to the Dominic sitting in her classroom today? Lillian knew she had to tread carefully. She couldn't simply ask Dominic about the drawing. It was personal, and she didn't want to invade her privacy. But the image stayed with her, adding another layer to the mystery of Dominic's life. As the school year progressed, Dominic continued to defy expectations. She excelled academically, formed meaningful connections with a few classmates, and slowly began to carve out a place for herself in the classroom. Yet, the questions about her past lingered. What had shaped Dominic into the person she was? And why did she seem so determined to hide parts of herself? The answer to these questions lies in Dominic's hidden talents and an unexpected twist that will challenge the entire class to rethink their assumptions. Join us as we uncover the surprising gift that will break barriers and bring Dominic's story into sharper focus. The morning sunlight streamed through the classroom windows, painting golden patterns across the desks. Lillian stood at the front, her warm smile radiating as she introduced a special activity for the day. "Today," she began, "we're going to celebrate the richness of our backgrounds. Each of you will share something about your heritage, a story, a recipe, or even a phrase in your family's native language." The room erupted into excited murmurs. Students exchanged glances, eagerly planning what they might share. Lillian noticed the energy, the way even the quieter children seemed eager to participate. But one face stood out: Dominic's. She sat silently, her fingers tracing the edges of her notebook, her expression unreadable. As students began volunteering, the air filled with stories of family traditions, foods passed down through generations, and phrases in various languages. One boy recited a blessing in Hebrew, another described his grandmother's pierogi recipe. The room felt alive with stories, yet Dominic remained quiet, her eyes focused on the blank page before her. Lillian finally addressed her. "Dominic," she said gently, "would you like to share something about your heritage?" A flicker of hesitation crossed Dominic's face, but then she nodded. Rising slowly, she walked to the front of the class. For a moment, she stood there, silent, as if gathering her thoughts. Then, in a voice that carried both strength and vulnerability, she began to speak. "My family comes from Italy," she said, her words measured. "There's a tradition in our village of singing stories about love, loss, and everything in between." Before anyone could ask what she meant, Dominic began to sing. The words flowed effortlessly, rich and melodic, in perfect Italian. Her voice was hauntingly beautiful, weaving a tapestry of emotions that filled the room. The class fell silent, entranced by the unexpected performance. Lillian felt a lump rise in her throat. She didn't understand all the words, but the emotion in Dominic's voice was universal hope, longing, resilience. It was a gift, pure and unfiltered, and it had a profound effect on everyone in the room. When Dominic finished, there was a beat of silence before the room erupted into applause. Even the students who had previously been indifferent or critical were on their feet, clapping and cheering. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" one student asked, awe evident in her voice. "My grandmother taught me," Dominic replied, her tone humble. "It's how we kept our stories alive." From that day forward, something shifted in the classroom. Dominic's talent had shattered the barriers that once stood between her and her peers. The students who had once judged her by her appearance now saw her for who she truly was, a person of depth, talent, and rich heritage. For Lillian, the moment was transformative. She saw how Dominic's courage to share a part of herself had not only elevated her in the eyes of her classmates, but also taught them an invaluable lesson. It was a reminder that everyone carries something extraordinary within them, waiting for the right moment to shine. The impact of Dominic's performance extended beyond the classroom. In the following weeks, her peers began to approach her more frequently, asking about her life, her family, and her songs. She was no longer the girl with worn-out clothes. She was Dominic, the girl with the voice that could transport you to another world. Lillian, however, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Dominic's story. How had she learned to sing with such depth of emotion? And what was the significance of the stories she chose to sing? One afternoon, while grading papers, Lillian decided to do some research. She looked up the songs Dominic had sung and discovered that they were traditional ballads from a specific region in Italy. These songs were often passed down orally, a way of preserving history and culture in rural communities. The discovery intrigued Lillian even further. What connection did Dominic have to this rich tradition? And why had she kept it hidden until now? The answers, Lillian would soon learn, were tied to a past that Dominic had been quietly carrying with her. A past that would soon come to light in ways that would change everything. Dominic's incredible talent has opened a window into her mysterious background, but it also raises new questions. As Lillian delves deeper, she uncovers fragments of a story that will reveal the true depth of Dominic's resilience and the challenges she's overcome. What secrets lie in Dominic's past, and how will they shape the journey ahead? Stay tuned to find out. The soft rhythm of pencil scratching against paper filled the classroom one quiet afternoon. Lillian sat at her desk, her gaze occasionally drifting to Dominic, who was engrossed in sketching something in her notebook. Though Dominic had become more open in recent weeks, Lillian still sensed there were pieces of her story left untold, fragments of a past that shaped the poised, resilient girl sitting before her. Lillian's curiosity had been piqued ever since she'd come across the traditional Italian songs. Dominic sang so beautifully. The songs were more than just melodies. They were windows into a culture deeply rooted in history and emotion. Why had Dominic chosen those particular songs? And what connection did they have to her life? One day after class, Lillian approached Dominic. "I noticed you've been drawing a lot lately," she said with a gentle smile. "Would you mind showing me some of your work?" Dominic hesitated, her hand instinctively shielding her notebook. But after a moment, she handed it over, her eyes cautious. "They're just sketches," she murmured. As Lillian flipped through the pages, she was struck by the depth of detail in Dominic's drawings. Many of the sketches depicted scenes of a rustic countryside, rolling hills, vineyards, and quaint stone houses. Others featured people, often a woman who appeared repeatedly, her face etched with both strength and tenderness. "These are incredible," Lillian said earnestly. "Is this your family's home?" Dominic nodded slowly. "It's where I lived before coming here, in a village in Italy." Lillian sensed an opportunity to learn more. "What brought you here?" she asked gently. For a moment, Dominic seemed to retreat into herself, her eyes fixed on the floor. Then, as if making a decision, she began to speak. "My parents, they passed away when I was very young," she said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "I lived with my grandmother after that. She was the one who taught me to sing, to draw, to tell stories through art." Lillian's heart ached at the revelation. She knew Dominic carried a quiet strength, but now she understood the weight behind it. "Your grandmother must have been an incredible woman," she said softly. "She was," Dominic replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "She always said that no matter how hard life gets, you can find beauty in it. That's why I draw and sing. It's my way of remembering her." Lillian listened intently, her admiration for Dominic growing with each word. But as Dominic continued, her story took an unexpected turn. "After my grandmother passed away, I came here to live with my uncle," she explained. "He's been very kind, but it's different. I didn't want people to treat me differently because of where I came from or what I've been through. So I decided to keep certain things to myself." Lillian nodded, understanding Dominic's desire for privacy. But there was something in Dominic's tone that hinted at more, something she wasn't yet ready to reveal. Over the next few days, Lillian found herself thinking about Dominic's story. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover, that the images in Dominic's drawings and the emotions in her songs hinted at a deeper narrative. One afternoon, while tidying the classroom, Lillian noticed a letter tucked inside one of Dominic's notebooks. The envelope bore a crest she didn't recognize, but the handwriting was elegant, almost regal. Curiosity got the better of her, and she unfolded the letter carefully. The contents stunned her. Written in Italian, the letter spoke of an estate, a family legacy, and an inheritance awaiting Dominic. It was signed by someone named Clemente Ercoli, a name Lillian hadn't heard before. Who was Clemente Ercoli? And why had Dominic never mentioned him? The letter raised more questions than answers, and Lillian knew she couldn't confront Dominic about it without breaching her trust. Instead, she decided to wait, hoping that Dominic would reveal more in her own time. That time came sooner than Lillian expected. One evening, as the school day was winding down, Dominic approached Lillian's desk. She seemed nervous, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her backpack. "Miss Lillian," she began hesitantly, "I think you should know something about me." Lillian set down her pen and gave Dominic her full attention. "Of course, Dominic. You can tell me anything." Dominic took a deep breath, as if summoning courage. "My uncle, Clemente, he's not just my guardian. He's very wealthy. Back home, our family owns a large estate. But I didn't want anyone here to know because I wanted people to see me for who I am, not for what I have." The confession took Lillian by surprise. She had suspected that there was more to Dominic's story, but this revelation added a new dimension. It explained Dominic's humility, her decision to wear modest clothes, and her reluctance to share too much about her background. "You wanted to build connections based on authenticity," Lillian said thoughtfully. Dominic nodded. "Exactly. I've seen how money changes the way people treat you. I didn't want that. I wanted to prove to myself, and maybe to others, that I could stand on my own." Lillian felt a surge of pride. Dominic's choice was a testament to her character, her desire to be valued for her mind and heart, rather than her material wealth. "You've already proven that, Dominic," Lillian said warmly, "and you've taught us all a lesson about looking beyond appearances." But Lillian also knew that this revelation was only the beginning. Dominic's connection to her wealthy uncle, the estate in Italy, and the life she left behind would soon come into focus, bringing with it a cascade of challenges and opportunities that neither of them could foresee. Dominic's hidden past has begun to emerge, but what role will her wealthy uncle Clemente play in the unfolding story? As his presence enters Dominic's life in an unexpected way, Lillian and Dominic will face decisions that could change their lives forever. Stay tuned to discover the powerful connections that lie ahead. It was a crisp autumn morning when a low, rumbling engine broke the serene quiet of the schoolyard. The car that pulled up to the curb was unlike anything the students or even the staff had ever seen. Sleek, black, and gleaming under the sunlight, it exuded an aura of sophistication and wealth that turned heads immediately. Lillian, standing by the classroom window, watched with quiet curiosity as the car door opened and a man stepped out. He was impeccably dressed, his tailored suit and polished shoes suggesting a man of both means and taste. His presence was commanding, and there was an undeniable air of confidence about him. "Who could that be?" murmured one of the teachers standing nearby. Lillian's gaze shifted to Dominic, who was sitting at her desk. The moment she saw the look on Dominic's face, she knew. Dominic's usually composed demeanor faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of apprehension. "Is everything all right, Dominic?" Lillian asked gently. Dominic nodded quickly, but her eyes betrayed her unease. "That's my uncle," she said softly. Lillian's curiosity deepened. This was the man Dominic had mentioned, the enigmatic Clemente Ercoli. While his wealth was no secret to Dominic, the impact of his sudden arrival on the school community was immediate. Clemente walked into the building with the ease of someone who knew his presence commanded attention. He approached the front office and introduced himself in a voice that was deep and measured. "I'm here to see my niece," he said, flashing a polite but firm smile. The moment Dominic saw him enter the hallway, she stood up from her desk, her posture stiff. As Clemente's gaze met hers, his expression softened, and a genuine smile broke through his composed exterior. "Dominic," he said warmly, extending his arms. Dominic walked toward him, her steps hesitant but her affection evident. They embraced briefly, and the sight of it stirred a mix of emotions in Lillian. It was clear that Clemente cared deeply for his niece, but there was something about his demeanor, his confidence, his polished appearance that felt at odds with Dominic's quiet humility. Clemente turned his attention to Lillian, introducing himself with a courteous nod. "You must be Miss Lillian," he said. "Dominic has spoken highly of you." Lillian extended her hand, her smile polite but curious. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Ercole. Dominic is an exceptional student. Please call me Clemente," he replied smoothly. "And thank you for looking out for her. It means a great deal to me." Their conversation was brief, but Lillian couldn't shake the feeling that Clemente's visit had a purpose beyond a familial check-in. As the day unfolded, her intuition proved correct. Later that afternoon, Clemente requested to speak with Lillian privately. They sat in her small office, the contrast between his polished appearance and the humble surroundings almost palpable. "I wanted to thank you personally for the kindness you've shown Dominic," Clemente began. "She's been through more than most people realize, and your support has made all the difference." Lillian nodded, her curiosity piqued. "Dominic is an extraordinary young woman. She has a strength and wisdom beyond her years." Clemente's expression grew contemplative. "She gets that from her grandmother," he said, almost to himself. "But I worry about her. She's determined to live modestly, to distance herself from the life she could have. I respect her choice, but it's complicated." "What do you mean?" Lillian asked carefully. Clemente hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Our family's estate in Italy is more than just a home. It's a legacy, a responsibility that Dominic will one day inherit. She doesn't want the attention that comes with it, but she can't escape it forever." Lillian listened intently, understanding the complexity of the situation. Dominic's humility was admirable, but it was clear that her choices were shaped by a desire to define herself outside of her family's wealth and status. "I want to give her the space to grow," Clemente continued, "but I also want her to embrace her heritage, to understand that it's not a burden but a gift." The conversation left Lillian with much to consider. Clemente's presence was a stark reminder of the world Dominic had chosen to step away from, and it was clear that his arrival would bring changes, whether Dominic was ready for them or not. The following days were marked by Clemente's subtle but significant influence. He attended a school assembly, his charismatic demeanor drawing admiration from students and staff alike. Dominic, however, remained steadfast in her usual routine, determined not to let her uncle's visit overshadow her identity. But Lillian noticed the strain it placed on her. Dominic's quiet moments of reflection became more frequent, and her usually confident demeanor showed cracks of vulnerability. One afternoon, Lillian found Dominic sitting alone under the large oak tree in the schoolyard, her sketchbook unopened on her lap. "Dominic," Lillian said gently as she approached, "you've been quiet lately. Is everything all right?" Dominic looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and uncertainty. "It's hard," she admitted. "I want to be myself, but it feels like everyone is looking at me differently now, like they're seeing Clemente instead of me." Lillian sat beside her, the cool breeze rustling the leaves above. "People's perceptions don't define you. Dominic, you've shown them who you are, your talents, your strength, your kindness. Those are the things that matter." Dominic nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "But what about Clemente?" she asked. "He wants me to embrace a life I've tried so hard to leave behind." "That's a decision only you can make," Lillian replied. "But whatever you choose, remember this. Your worth isn't tied to your circumstances. It's tied to who you are, and that's something no one can take away from you." Dominic smiled faintly, the weight in her eyes lifting just a little. Lillian's words were a reminder that even amidst the complexities of family and legacy, Dominic had the power to chart her own path. As Clemente's presence begins to shift the dynamics of Dominic's life, an unexpected proposal will force her to confront her past and reimagine her future. What will Dominic choose, and how will her decision affect the bond she's built along the way? Stay tuned for the emotional turning point that's about to unfold. The late afternoon sun bathed the school in a golden hue as Clemente Ercole walked into Lillian's classroom. His tailored suit seemed out of place among the desks and chalkboards, yet his presence commanded attention without a word. He carried an envelope in his hand, which he placed gently on Lillian's desk. I've given this much thought, he began, his voice steady but carrying an undertone of emotion. And I believe it's time Dominic comes home to her true home. Lillian looked at him curiously, her instincts telling her that this was no ordinary conversation. What do you mean, Clemente? Clemente took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Dominic belongs in Italy, at our family's estate. It's not just a matter of heritage, it's about giving her the opportunity she deserves. The estate is a part of her, and I want her to embrace it fully, to see what her future could be. The weight of his words hung in the air. Lillian's immediate thought was of Dominic, who had fought so hard to create her own identity, independent of her family's wealth and status. Clemente seemed to read her thoughts. I'm not trying to force her into a life she doesn't want, he added, but I think she's denying herself experiences that could help her grow. That's why I've extended an invitation for both of you. Lillian blinked, caught off guard. For me? Clemente nodded. You've been a pillar of support for Dominic, and I see how much she values your guidance. I believe that having you there would make the transition easier for her. And perhaps, it could also give you a chance to experience something new, a fresh start. If you will. The idea was as enticing as it was overwhelming. For Lillian, a teacher who had spent years nurturing young minds within the same familiar walls, the thought of stepping into a new world was both exhilarating and daunting. Later that evening, Clemente shared the proposal with Dominic. They sat together in the schoolyard under the sprawling oak tree, the envelope lying unopened between them. I want you to come back to Italy with me, Clemente said, his voice gentle but firm. The estate needs you. Our family's legacy needs you. But more importantly, I think this could be a chance for you to find a deeper connection to who you are. Dominic stared at the envelope, her expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. You make it sound like I've been running away from something, she said softly. Not running away, Clemente replied, but perhaps holding yourself back. You've worked so hard to prove that you can stand on your own, and you've done that beautifully. But there's no shame in embracing your roots, Dominic. They're a part of you. Dominic didn't respond immediately. She picked up the envelope and opened it, revealing a set of photographs of the estate's sprawling vineyards, grand halls, and the modest room that Clemente had prepared for her. The images stirred a flood of memories, both bittersweet and comforting. As the days passed, the proposal became a topic of quiet contemplation for Dominic. She sought refuge in her sketchbook, filling its pages with images of the estate, her classmates, and Lillian. The decision weighed heavily on her, not just because of what it meant for her future, but because of what she would be leaving behind. One afternoon, Dominic approached Lillian as she packed up her things. Miss Lillian, she began, her voice hesitant. What would you do if you were in my place? Lillian set down her bag and looked at Dominic thoughtfully. That's a tough question, she admitted, but I think I'd ask myself what I truly want, what feels right in my heart, not just in my mind. Dominic nodded, her expression introspective. It's hard to know what's right, she said quietly. I don't want to leave everything I've built here, but I also don't want to ignore the possibilities waiting for me there. Lillian placed a reassuring hand on Dominic's shoulder. Whatever you decide, it doesn't have to be forever. Life is full of chapters, and sometimes you have to explore a new one to truly understand the story you're writing. The words seemed to resonate with Dominic. She smiled faintly and thanked Lillian before heading home, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. As the day of the decision approached, Clemente and Lillian shared a quiet conversation in the school's empty library. She's torn, Lillian said, and I understand why. This place has become her sanctuary, a place where she's been able to grow on her own terms. I don't want to take that away from her, Clemente replied, but I also want her to see the bigger picture. The world is larger than this school, this town. She has so much potential, and I want her to see it for herself. Their conversation was interrupted by Dominic, who entered the library with a determined expression. She looked at both of them, her posture straight and her eyes clear. I've made my decision, she said. Both Clemente and Lillian waited, their breaths held. I'll go to Italy, Dominic continued, but only if Miss Lillian comes with me. She's been my anchor here, and I can't imagine taking this step without her. The words took Lillian by surprise. She looked at Dominic, then at Clemente, who smiled faintly, as if he had anticipated this outcome. "It seems the decision isn't just yours to make," Clemente said, turning to Lillian. "What do you say?" Lillian felt a rush of emotions, uncertainty, excitement, and a deep sense of responsibility. The opportunity was unlike anything she had ever imagined, but it was clear how much it meant to Dominic. "I'll think about it," Lillian said finally, her voice steady. And with that, the next chapter of their lives began to take shape, filled with possibilities and challenges they had yet to imagine. Dominic's decision marks the start of a new journey. But how will Lillian respond to the invitation that could change both their lives? As the path to Italy beckons, the bonds of trust and courage will be tested in ways they never expected. Stay tuned as the story takes an emotional and transformative turn. The weeks following Dominic's decision to move to Italy were filled with a quiet tension. Preparations were underway for her departure, and the school buzzed with murmurs of curiosity and goodbyes. Yet, beneath the surface of these visible changes, Lillian couldn't shake a nagging feeling, a sense that there was something more to Dominic's story that remained hidden. One afternoon, as Lillian and Dominic packed up some of her things, the conversation turned reflective. "Dominic," Lillian began gently, "I've always admired your strength and humility, but I can't help wondering what made you choose this path. To live so modestly when you could have embraced the life your uncle offered earlier?" Dominic paused, her hand stilling over a book she had been placing in a box. She sighed, sitting down beside Lillian on the floor. "It's not that I don't value what Clemente has given me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "But there's something I learned a long time ago. People are kinder when they don't know you're wealthy. They treat you more honestly, without ulterior motives." Her words carried a weight that Lillian hadn't fully grasped until now. "Was that something you experienced before?" she asked softly. Dominic nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Back in Italy, when I was younger, everyone knew about the Arcoli family. Our name carried a kind of expectation. People would try to get close to us, but it was always about what they could gain. When my parents passed and I moved in with my grandmother, things changed. She taught me that true connection comes when people see you for who you are, not what you have." Lillian felt a pang of empathy. She could now see the layers behind Dominic's decisions: her simple clothes, her reserved demeanor, and even her reluctance to share her story. "She believed in humility," Dominic continued, her eyes distant as if recalling a cherished memory. "She said it was a way to remind ourselves that we're no better or worse than anyone else. That's why I chose to live the way I have here. I wanted to see if I could stand on my own, without the Ercole name overshadowing me." Lillian placed a reassuring hand on Dominic's shoulder. "And you've done that beautifully," she said. "You've shown everyone, including yourself, how remarkable you are." But there was more to Dominic's humility than a simple desire for authenticity. Over the next few days, bits and pieces of her story began to emerge, like threads unraveling from a tapestry. One evening, Clemente invited Lillian to dinner at a quiet Italian bistro in town. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, their conversation turned to Dominic's journey. "She's always been different," Clemente said, his tone fond but tinged with concern. "Even as a child, she had this strong sense of independence. After her grandmother passed, I thought bringing her here would give her a fresh start, but she insisted on doing things her way." Lillian listened intently as Clemente shared more about Dominic's life before coming to the school. "She never wanted special treatment," he continued. "When I offered to send her to a private academy, she refused. She said she wanted to be somewhere real, where she could understand people for who they were, not who they pretended to be." Lillian's admiration for Dominic grew with every word. It was clear that her humility wasn't just a choice, it was a philosophy, a way of navigating the world with integrity and authenticity. But it wasn't until Lillian came across an old photograph in Dominic's belongings that the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. The photograph showed Dominic as a young girl, standing beside her grandmother in a lush garden. In her hands was a small basket of grapes, and her smile radiated pure joy. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note: strength in simplicity, love in every act. The words struck a chord with Lillian. They encapsulated everything Dominic stood for: her resilience, her compassion, and her unyielding belief in the power of genuine human connection. The day before Dominic's departure, Lillian sat with her in the now empty classroom. The desks were bare, and the walls, once adorned with student artwork, felt strangely hollow. "You've taught us so much, Dominic," Lillian said, her voice filled with emotion. "Not just about strength, but about the importance of seeing people for who they truly are." Dominic smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You've taught me too, Miss Lillian. You've shown me that it's okay to let people in, to trust, and to share pieces of yourself." As they hugged, Lillian felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. Dominic's journey had been transformative not just for her, but for everyone she had touched. Dominic's humility has been revealed as a profound choice rooted in wisdom and experience, but her journey is far from over. As she prepares to embrace her heritage, new challenges and opportunities will arise, testing her courage and the bonds she's formed along the way. What awaits Dominic and Lillian in Italy? Stay tuned as their story unfolds in unexpected and inspiring ways. The day of Dominic's departure arrived with a bittersweet sense of anticipation. The schoolyard, usually filled with the sounds of laughter and chatter, was quieter than usual as classmates and teachers gathered to bid her farewell. Dominic, standing by the oak tree that had become her favorite refuge, seemed both nervous and excited. Lillian approached her with a warm smile, holding a small wrapped package. "A little something to take with you," she said, handing it to Dominic. Dominic unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather-bound journal. On the first page, Lillian had written a note in her elegant handwriting. "May this journal remind you to capture not only your thoughts, but the lessons you learn along the way. Your story is far from over, Dominic, and the world is eager to see what you'll create." Dominic hugged Lillian tightly, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you, Miss Lillian, for everything." As Clementa's car pulled up to the curb, the reality of the moment began to sink in. Dominic looked around at her classmates, her gaze lingering on the faces that had once judged her, but now regarded her with admiration and respect. She stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed them. "Thank you all for teaching me something important," she began. "That when we take the time to see each other for who we truly are, we can create something better together." The simplicity of her words carried a profound weight, and for a moment, the group stood in reflective silence. As Dominic climbed into the car, Lillian felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. Watching her student embark on this new chapter was both a loss and a triumph. For Lillian, the days following Dominic's departure were filled with reflection. She found herself revisiting moments from the past year: Dominic's first day at school, her quiet strength in the face of judgment, and the way her talent and humility had inspired those around her. These memories stirred questions in Lillian's mind. What had she learned from Dominic's journey? And how could those lessons extend beyond the walls of her classroom? One evening, as Lillian sat by her window watching the sunset, she began jotting down her thoughts. Kindness as a ripple effect. Lillian recalled how her initial act of kindness, providing Dominic with clothes and supplies, had set off a chain reaction. Dominic's confidence grew. Her peers began to see her differently, and the entire classroom dynamic shifted. It was a reminder that even small gestures of compassion could have far-reaching effects. The power of authenticity. Dominic's choice to live modestly, despite her wealthy background, was a testament to the importance of being true to oneself. Her decision not only shaped her identity, but also taught others to value character over material appearances. The role of resilience. Dominic's ability to navigate challenges with grace and determination highlighted the strength that comes from adversity. It was a lesson in embracing difficulties as opportunities for growth. Breaking down prejudices. Perhaps the most profound lesson was how Dominic's journey dismantled the biases and assumptions of those around her. Her peers learned to look beyond appearances and see the value of genuine human connection. As Lillian wrote, she realized that these lessons weren't just for her students. They were universal truths that could resonate with anyone. The following week, Lillian decided to share Dominic's story during a school assembly. Standing on the stage, she spoke with a calm yet powerful presence. "Today, I want to tell you about a student who taught us all something extraordinary," she began. As Lillian recounted Dominic's journey, she saw the faces of her audience transform from curiosity to introspection. She concluded with a call to action. What if we chose to see each other without judgment? What if we looked beyond appearances and found the courage to connect with one another on a deeper level? The world needs more empathy, and it starts with us. The applause that followed was thunderous. But it wasn't just about the speech, it was about the impact of Dominic's story and the ripple effect of her actions. Months later, a letter arrived for Lillian. It was from Dominic, now settled in Italy. Asterisk, "Dear Miss Lillian, life here is different, but in many ways, it feels like coming home. The estate is beautiful, but what makes it special are the stories I've uncovered, stories of my family, their struggles, and their triumphs. I've started sketching the vineyard at sunset. It reminds me of the oak tree at school, my quiet place to reflect. And I've begun teaching some of the younger children in the village, sharing the lessons you taught me about kindness and seeing people for who they truly are. Thank you for believing in me and for helping me believe in myself. You'll always be a part of my story." As Lillian read the letter, a sense of fulfillment washed over her. Dominic's journey was proof that even the smallest acts of compassion could lead to profound change. As Dominic settles into her new life in Italy, her story continues to inspire those around her. But what challenges and discoveries await her as she delves deeper into her heritage and embraces her new role? Stay tuned as we explore the transformative power of connection and the enduring impact of kindness. In the months following Dominic's departure, life unfolded in ways neither she nor Lillian could have predicted. For Dominic, her new surroundings in Italy were both a challenge and a revelation. The Accoli estate, with its sprawling vineyards and historic architecture, was a world away from the modest school she had come to call home. Yet in its beauty and history, Dominic began to uncover layers of herself that had remained hidden. Her uncle Clemente proved to be both a guide and a mirror. He introduced her to the intricacies of running the estate, the traditions of their family, and the responsibilities that came with such a legacy. At first, the weight of these expectations felt overwhelming, but with time, Dominic began to see them not as burdens, but as opportunities to honor her grandmother's teachings, of finding strength in simplicity and love in every act. One day, while exploring the estate's library, Dominic came across an old journal belonging to her grandmother. Its pages were filled with sketches, poems, and reflections, many of which mirrored Dominic's own thoughts. One entry, in particular, stood out. "Our wealth is not in what we possess, but in how we use it to lift others. True legacy lies in the connections we build and the kindness we show." The words resonated deeply with Dominic. They reminded her of Lillian's lessons and the connection she had forged back at school. Inspired, Dominic began to think of ways to use her family's resources to make a difference. Back at the school, Lillian continued to reflect on Dominic's influence. She noticed a subtle but significant shift in her students. Inspired by Dominic's story, they began to approach one another with more empathy and curiosity. Small acts of kindness became more common: a shared lunch, a helping hand with homework, or a simple word of encouragement. Lillian often wondered how Dominic was faring in her new life. Her occasional letters provided glimpses into her journey, but they also hinted at a larger vision taking shape. One morning, Lillian received a package from Italy. Inside was a letter from Dominic and an invitation to an event at the Accoli estate. The letter read, "Dear Miss Lillian, I've been working on something I think you'll be proud of. It's a project inspired by everything you've taught me and everything I've learned here. I hope you'll come to see it in person. It wouldn't be complete without you." Intrigued, Lillian made the journey to Italy. As she arrived at the estate, she was struck by its beauty and the sense of history it carried. But what moved her most was what Dominic had created. The event was a celebration of art, music, and storytelling, bringing together people from all walks of life. Dominic had transformed a portion of the estate into a cultural center where local children could learn skills in art, music, and literature. I wanted to create a place where people could connect, where they could share their stories and learn from one another. Dominic explained as she gave Lillian a tour. Lillian felt a swell of pride. Dominic had taken the lessons of empathy and kindness she had learned and woven them into something tangible, something lasting. The event was a resounding success, but it was also a moment of reflection for both Dominic and Lillian. As they sat together under a pergola, the sounds of laughter and music filling the air, they spoke of how far they had come. "You've created something truly remarkable," Lillian said. "Your grandmother would be so proud." Dominic smiled, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't have done it without you. You taught me to see the value in every connection, no matter how small." Their conversation turned to the broader impact of their journey. For Lillian, it was a reminder that teaching was not just about imparting knowledge, but about nurturing hearts and minds. For Dominic, it was a realization that her past, her present, and her future were all connected by the choices she made and the people she touched. As the evening drew to a close, Clemente joined them, his expression one of quiet pride. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Together, we can continue to build something meaningful, a legacy not of wealth, but of impact." Dominic nodded, her resolve evident. "That's what I want, to create a legacy that matters, one built on compassion and connection." As Lillian prepared to return home, she felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything she had ever experienced. Dominic's journey had come full circle, but it was also a beginning, one that would ripple outward in ways they couldn't yet imagine. This story isn't just about Dominic or Lillian. It's a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the courage to look beyond appearances. Their journey reminds us that even the smallest acts of compassion can transform lives and create legacies that endure. If this story has touched your heart, consider subscribing to our channel for more inspiring tales. Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know. What legacy do you want to leave behind? Let's continue to spread kindness, one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.